That means we apply the same laws to everyone. There is not one set of laws for the powerful and another for the powerless, one for the rich and another for the poor, one for Democrats and another for Republicans, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity or religion. Our job is to pursue justice without fear or favor. Our job is not to do what is politically convenient. Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate. As the president himself has said, and I reaffirm today, I am not the president's lawyer. I will add, I am not Congress's prosecutor. The Justice Department works for the American people. Our job is to follow the facts and the law, and that is what we do. All of us recognize that with this work comes public scrutiny, criticism, and legitimate oversight. These are appropriate and important given the matters and the gravity of the matters that are before the department. But singling out individual career public servants who are just doing their jobs is dangerous, particularly at a time of increased threats to the safety of public servants and their families. We will not be intimidated. We will do our jobs free from outside influence, and we will not back down from defending our democracy. Third, I want to explain why we approach our job in this way. The Justice Department was founded in the wake of the Civil War and in the midst of Reconstruction with the first principal task of bringing to justice white supremacists and others who terrorize Black Americans to prevent them from exercising their civil rights. The Justice Department's job then and now is to fulfill the promise that it is at the foundation of our democracy, that the law will treat each of us alike. That promise is also why I am here.
This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. You just heard a new fighting, dark Merrick Garland fighting back as he has to against the MAGA Republicans that used a 4-hour charade of a hearing with our chief legal officer, the Attorney General of the United States, as a dress rehearsal for the impeachment process that they're going to try to use for political gain against Joe Biden. That's all this was. This was a dress rehearsal. And Merrick Garland drew the line in the sand early on with the clip that you just saw, where he explained the purpose of the Department of Justice and also explained he is not Joe Biden's attorney, but neither is he Congress's attorney. And he is not going to be baited into, despite how many times he's asked in a 4-hour hearing, into opening the hood and revealing the inner workings of current pending former investigations to compromise them, witnesses, prosecutors, and FBI. Not going to do it. Doesn't matter if the topic is Hunter Biden and David Weiss, U.S. Attorney for Delaware, Trump appointee that's been investigating Hunter Biden without real success for the last 4.5 years, now appointed special counsel by Merrick Garland to continue the investigation, which led to the recent indictment. Not going to talk about that. And not going to talk about Donald Trump, except to explain once again, in rudimentary fashion, that he, Merrick Garland, is not the prosecutor for Donald Trump. It is the special counsel, Jack Smith, which he approved, he appointed, and Jack Smith is following those facts wherever they take him, without fear or favor. That there isn't two systems of justice in this country for the rich and the poor, for the powerful and the powerless. There's only one. And the Department of Justice is supporting and defending democracy because that is its primary mission, its prime directive. And that's what we heard Merrick Garland finally do in the most fiery presentation I've ever seen Merrick Garland make. As I've said before, I've criticized Merrick Garland only in his presentation because, he's a bookish, owlish, former federal judge, appellate judge at that, very dry. There's this silent tomb of the appellate courts that these judges sit in. I've been there. I've argued in front of them. You could literally hear your own breath and a pin drop when you're in that room. And so that's the world that he kind of lives in, this cloistered, insulated world. But he's got to get into the real world, and he did it today. All right. He can't just look like he wandered in like a law professor from a law library and sit down to, a bank of microphones and flash of cameras. He didn't this time. He was prepared because he knows what's at stake at this particular hearing is to start to set, right, the course for the Biden defense of the future impeachment process, which is coming down the pike because this MAGA Congress has nothing else to do. They can't pass any bills that matter. They can't help the American people with any laws. So they got to waste all their time that's remaining on the clock until the next election with these bogus investigations. And Merrick Garland has had enough. When one of the Congress people for the Republicans named one of the prosecutors, not Jack Smith, somebody on his team, Merrick Garland took grave offense to that these prosecutors, career servants, public servants, would be doxxed, right? Because he knows that that's just going to lead to the continued violent rhetoric, leads to violent action when it's in the hands of Trump supporters. And that we've had in this country, as I've talked about before on Legal AF, federal judges and their families, former federal judges and their families, state court judges and prosecutors and FBI agents assassinated. That is a dark, dark, dirty secret of our democracy, that people on the front line, first responders to democracy, like the FBI, like the Department of Justice, and their families are in harm's way every day, whether they're investigating drug cartels, terrorist cells, domestic terrorism, Jan 6, Donald Trump and his followers. They're at risk every day. And to have Republican leaders in a completely irresponsible way to continue to attack members of the Department of Justice and the FBI is beyond the pale. And finally, Merrick Garland has had enough. His actions, I've never faulted. I think he's running a superbly efficient and a Department of Justice that we can be proud of in terms of their priorities, in terms of what and who they are investigating, who they're arresting, who they are prosecuting, and who they are convicting. Whether it's protecting abortion rights that remain in this country, whether it's making sure that immigrants and migrants are protected and are not abused, whether it's rooting out terrorism from our country, domestic, foreign, or otherwise, monitoring our enemies. I mean, he gave a clip about what would happen if the FBI were eliminated. And listen to this hellscape. Listen to this. It's not dystopian. This is reality. People don't realize what the FBI does to protect this country every day, right, from enemies, foreign and domestic. Listen to Merrick Garland in his clip here.
What would be the impact on America of defunding the FBI?
Defunding the FBI would leave the United States naked to the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party, to the attacks by Iranians on American citizens and attempts to assassinate former officials, to the Russian aggression, to North Korean cyber attacks, to violent crime in the United States, which the FBI helps to fight against, to all kinds of espionage, to domestic violent extremists who have attacked our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, and who have killed individuals out of racial hatred. I cannot imagine the consequences of defunding the FBI, but they would be catastrophic.
Thank you. I want to turn to Mr. Weiss's investigation and the authority he's been granted to conduct that investigation without interference in whatever way he deems necessary. You testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee on March 1st of this year that David Weiss had, quote, full authority over any investigation concerning Hunter Biden. Was that a true statement at the time?
Yes, Mr. Weiss has full authority to conduct his investigation however he wishes. And Mr. Weiss has confirmed that in letters to this committee.
You forget how much the FBI does to protect our America. After 9/11, I thought, to be frank, that all the vulnerable underbelly of our country would be exposed to terrorism, foreign and domestic. I thought we would have shopping malls, food courts, movie theaters, you name it, not just the schools that are the subject and the focus and the target of mass shootings. I thought all those places would, and we would see exploding and bombing and all of that, the way that the IRA attacked the UK, bombs going off in front of the Prime Minister's office, house, and that kind of thing. That didn't happen since 9/11. And it's not because we stand in line at TSA at the airport. It's because the FBI, working and coordinated with other agencies of the federal government, including Homeland Security and the CIA, root out and destroy these threats before they happen. And so to have these feckless congresspeople, MAGA primarily, who don't even have the right to hold Merrick Garland's jockstrap, grill him for political gain and as a backhanded way to get at Joe Biden is disgusting. We're supposed to be Americans unified in our democracy and as patriots. It's one thing to do oversight over the Department of Justice. You think they're misspending money, or you don't think the guy is strong enough on crime or what? Okay, great. But to use the House as a bludgeon, as a cudgel for Donald Trump, and to run interference for him in such an obvious and transparent way, that's not a proper use of oversight power by Congress. It just isn't. You want to go line by Merrick Garland's budget and talk about some allocation issues? It's boring TV, but that's a proper oversight. But to ask him about the inner workings of deliberations and current investigations, just as they tried to do against Fani Willis, the Fulton County DA, just like they tried to do with Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, all prosecuting cases against Donald Trump, is transparently inappropriate, wrong, and illegal. It just is. Fani Willis schooled Jim Jordan in her letter. In fact, that letter got entered into evidence during the hearing by a Democratic congressperson. He also entered into evidence for the congressional record the letter of Alvin Bragg saying he's not going to appear in front of Jim Jordan and talk about an existing current investigation. Fani Willis was even better because she so schooled Jim Jordan, basically said, I don't know if you need this primer sort of state prosecutions in the role of government, coloring book or for dummies, but here's a copy. You may want to grab it and read it. But no, I'm not appearing in front of you, and you're interfering with a state criminal prosecution. And that's what you're not allowed to do. You're also not allowed to get underneath and put on your surgical gloves and try to be a proctologist with our Merrick Garland and our Attorney General about pending investigations. It was obvious they were trotting out their Hunter Biden attacks. David Weiss this and David Weiss that. You know what? David Weiss was the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney. Okay, that investigation of Hunter Biden started under Donald Trump. Let me repeat this in case people forget the timeline. Bill Barr approved the investigation of Donald Trump, of Hunter Biden under Donald Trump. It only continued because the Democrats and Joe Biden didn't want to be accused of showing political favor to the president's son. And so Joe Biden made it clear that he was not going to interfere with that investigation. Merrick Garland made it clear he was not going to be interfering with that investigation, that hands were off for David Weiss to do whatever he wanted. When David Weiss needed more powers and he finally asked to be special counsel, he was appointed special counsel under that statute, giving him more powers against Hunter Biden. And the best he's come up with is an indictment because for 11 days, Hunter Biden owned a gun after checking the box that said he didn't use drugs when he admitted in a memoir that he did. That's what that entire case is about. Tens of millions of dollars of investigatory resources devoted to nailing Hunter Biden on a gun charge because he owned a gun for 11 days when he wasn't truthful about his drug use. Okay. That's what the Republicans think needs to be pursued. I guess that'll be pursued. It is already been well reported that Merrick Garland has cut off all communication with the White House about things related to Donald Trump. He's not picking up the phone. He is radio silent. So it's not just that he's not the president's lawyer. He's purposefully put up a wall, right? A compliance wall between his office, the Department of Justice, and the White House about things related to Trump. So there is no discussion. History will not write a book about emails and communications and correspondence and phone calls between Joe Biden and Merrick Garland over Donald Trump, because they don't exist. And don't let people tell you they exist or insinuate that they exist like Donald Trump, because that's not how Merrick Garland is running his Department of Justice. And for the Republicans to say in one of their questions that it's Merrick Garland's fault that 4 out of 5 or 65% of Americans don't trust the justice system, or they think there's 2 tiers of justice. First of all, those statistics are wrong. Second of all, they're created by Donald Trump trying to destabilize the Department of Justice and the justice system, just as he tried to destabilize confidence in the election system when he wanted to cling to power and pursued his coup conspiracy. Same guy, same playbook, facing pages, period. And Jack Smith calls it out every time he files something in all of the court proceedings against Donald Trump. But now you've seen ultimately the boss for the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, in a masterful performance in front of Congress as a precursor and a dress rehearsal for what we can expect when the impeachment hearings start. I'm going to continue to follow what our Attorney General says in press releases, press conferences, and his appearances before Congress in only one place, the MeidasTouch Network on their YouTube channel. Free subscribe, get them to 2 million. Follow what I do here, I request, respectfully, on the MeidasTouch channel. I do it on hot takes just like this one. And Wednesdays and Saturdays, join me for the leading podcast devoted to law and politics called Legal AF. It's What You Think. Co-anchors Karen Friedman Agnifilo Wednesday, Ben Meisalis on Saturday. And we sit on that valuable real estate at the corner of law and politics so that you don't have to. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. We bring the facts and analysis, just like what I did on this hot take. Until my next hot take and Legal AF episode, this is Michael Popok.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.